Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the blues to blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, I've been talking about this for about a week now. And I recently did a quick hit on Bleacher Report. If you're not already subbed up to me over on Bleacher Report or the Washington Commanders for that matter, you should be subbed to both. But in any event, I talked about this on a recent quick hit on Bleacher Report about the importance of this game the Commanders will be taking place in part in week one against the Giants. Like, this is a really big game. And look, that's hyperbole. It's a big game for every team. Every team wants to win in week one. Everyone wants to get off to a fast start. No one wants to start the season 0-1. But this is a big game for a number of reasons. Take a listen to what I had to say on my recent Bleacher Report quick hit, and then we'll come back and kind of talk about it even further. Take a listen. How bad do the Washington Commanders need to win in week one versus the New York Giants? Let me be Captain Obvious for a second. It's a divisional opponent. It's week one. You're at home. All of these things matter. And definitely, if you have aspirations of winning the division, making the postseason, you need to win games against teams in your own division and in the conference. With that said, the Giants aren't supposed to be a good team this season. The Commanders have high expectations for themselves this year. There are a lot of people out there that think the Commanders are going to take a step back this season. There are a lot of people that think Jaden Daniels is going to incur a sophomore slump. This is a big test for the Washington Commanders' newly improved offensive line against one of the better defensive fronts they'll see all season in the New York Giants. In addition, the Commanders are comfortable favorites in this week one tilt versus the Giants. You want to come out and establish to everyone, to yourself, that last year wasn't a fluke and that we are who we say we are. Then you have to go out and beat a team that you're supposed to in week one. Speaking of a team that you feel like you need to handle, the Commanders need to get off to a fast start this year. I think their softest part of their schedule is the first 4 weeks of the season. And I say that very loosely because it's very disrespectful to teams that haven't played a single game this year to assume that they're going to be an easy dub. And I don't like to call anyone an easy dub, but if you look at the schedule, you look at the teams that come after week 4, things get a lot tougher for the Commanders. And so you have to beat teams like the Giants in week 1 at home if you are who you say you are this season. If you're the Commanders, you can't afford a letdown in week 1 because then you give credence to all of those people who said last year was a fluke. You want to come out and establish that you are one of those teams this year to be reckoned with. You need to take care of business against the New York Giants in week 1. So, as fans, we've been hearing a lot of trash talk from Giants fans, really thinking they're going to win this game. And that's what happens in week 1. If we were in their shoes, we'd probably be doing the exact same thing. But let's move that aside for a second. I just want to talk about the notion of if you are who you say you are, prove it. This is one of those situations to me. We feel like this is a Super Bowl caliber team, at worst, a playoff caliber team. And we know once you get into the show with Jaden Daniels, anything is possible, all bets are off. So just get us to the dance. But we think we're a Super Bowl contending team. We think we can compete for the NFC East crown. If you are who you say you are, you can't lose to a team the likes of the New York Giants. And again, that's no disrespect to the Giants. It's just where they are in their process right now. They're not on our level. They don't have a Jaden Daniels at quarterback. We don't know if their head coach and GM are going to make it out of this season alive or not. That is not our situation. If you are who you say you are, then you need to take care of business against the New York Giants in week number 1. Get off to a fast start. There are a lot of people that think this is a fraudulent team. We're going to talk about that in greater detail, tomorrow. We're going to have a nice, lengthy discussion about the expectations that we've set and the outward perception of what this team is going into 2025, because the luster has faded, so to speak. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But make no mistake about it. This is a big game for the Commanders. It's an NFC East contest. It's a home game. And it's an opportunity to get off to a fast start. Something that I think, and you just heard me say that on the Bleacher Report Quick Hit, is a big deal for this team. I've talked about it when the schedule first came out. I've talked about it many a times. I'm talking about it again. This team needs to get off to a fast start. They got off to a fast start last year, and it's what saved them. Had they gotten off to a slow start like they used to with Rivera as head coach, that 3-game losing streak would have doomed us. It would have ended us. But we started 7-2. We had the cushion to drop 3 straight and then rebound. We got to get off to a fast start. And they've given us an opportunity, even though it's a tough NFC East opponent. We know it's not going to be easy. At least I do. A lot of y'all have been talking crazy, and hopefully you're right. But we haven't put belt to ass with this Giants team before, right? That's not what we do with them. When we beat them, it's usually close. When they beat us, it's usually close. These are usually close contests. I'd like it not to be. That'd be great because they're not on our level. But anything goes, as they say, on any given Sunday. Well, that Sunday for the Giants can't be this Sunday. This is a really big game because if you are who you say you are on Sunday, then prove it. So let's get to in other news. And we heard from both coordinators. You know, I'm a big coordinator guy, so we'll talk about what was said there here in a second. But before we do that, we are going to take a closer look by taking a look at the injury report for both teams heading into Sunday's contest from Thursday's practice. And we start with the good guys, and it's the same 5 guys that were on the injury report. Yesterday, I think we had an additional, I think we had one more guy up here. Zach Ertz was up here yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. So he's been removed from the list. And I think Jonathan Jones was added to this. I don't think he was up there yesterday. I could be wrong. I know Dorrance and Noah were both up there with knee. Matt Gay was here with the illness, and Marcus was here with an Achilles. I don't think Jonathan Jones and his hamstring were on this list yesterday. Maybe he was. Right now, I'm not concerned with anybody, but I believe Jonathan Jones is a new entry onto the list. He's been dealing with a lot because we haven't seen him since the New England. Well, first of all, as fans, and I talked about this with Candy Waller yesterday or a couple of days now ago. As a Commanders fan, we haven't, unless you went out to camp and were at practices where Jonathan Jones was actually playing, you haven't seen him in a Commander's uniform. We don't know what he looks like as a Commander. I know what he's capable of and what he did as a New England Patriot. I have no idea what he's going to bring to the table here. We wanted to lay eyes on this guy in the preseason, and we haven't had that chance because before we could even get to the first preseason game, he had sustained an injury. Clearly, he is not fully healthy yet. Don't even know if he'll be. Now, he is the one guy of all of these players that I look at that could actually be out of Sunday's contest. I'm not worried about Marcus Mariota. I'm not worried about Matt Gay. I'm not worried about Noah Brown nor Dorrance Armstrong. All those guys will be fine and ready to go come Sunday. Jonathan Jones is a bit of a question mark. So being that he was limited yesterday, he probably was on the list yesterday as well. He was limited again today. Something just to keep an eye on. Hopefully it's nothing serious. And hopefully it's the same hamstring that has him hamstrung or had him hamstrung all summer, and that he's really healthy and they're just kind of taking it slow with him, similar to Dorrance Armstrong and Noah Brown with their current situations. But none of this feels like a hindrance to being on the field and being active on Sunday. We'll keep an eye on that. Friday, we'll get these game statuses and we'll kind of find out where we are. Again, nothing here seems threatening on this injury report, and as long as nothing else crops up new, we should be just fine. Let's get to the ops, and it's the same thing. It's been just Andrew Thomas, foot injury, limited on Wednesday, limited again Thursday. I've said this before. I'll say it again. Until he's not playing, expect him to be out there at left tackle, anchoring that Giants offensive line. We'll see what he does on Friday and then what his game status is. My guess is he'll be a game time decision. He'll be listed as questionable. We'll have no idea whether he's playing or not. And then we'll find out on Sunday morning if Andrew Thomas is indeed in the lineup. My guess, again, is going to be yes, he is. But we will see. In any event, let's talk about what was said at the podium by both offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury and defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. I'll start with Joe Witt. Normally, I start with Cliff Kingsbury, but Joe Witt Jr. had the longer press conference today of the two coordinators, and I have to question some of the things that were said, so we're going to talk about it. So he started off with his analysis of the New York Giants, and he talked about, the challenges that they pose. He talked about Malik Neighbors, which we're going to talk about even more so here in a second. He talked about Tyrone Tracy, who played really well, and a lot of people don't talk about him when they talk about the Giants and their running game and how effective they were at times last season. Tyrone Tracy, as a rookie, had some really big games, including the one against Seattle, another one against the Steelers. He played well last year, and Joe Witt Jr. basically said, he's a really good running back, very patient, explosive. He talked about Russell Wilson and his ability to lead, throw the deep ball, etc. So he talked about all the threats that they pose. And then he was asked about Malik Neighbors right out of the gate. And he's like, he's one of the best young receivers in the NFL. I think we all agree with that assessment. He's a handful. He's physical. He's got explosive speed to get over the top. He can break tackles, which he did against us in the second game of the season last year. And so he presents all types of challenges for our football team and our secondary. But I can tell you, Joe Witt, just in his demeanor and even some of the things he said, he feels a lot more comfortable about being able to defend a Malik Neighbors this year versus last year when we put Michael Davis, Vato Davis, out on the field, and it was a shit show in that first half. He talked about what he likes about the corners, the secondary as a whole, but really the cornerback position. And he talked about them being sticky all summer long and that they produced the ball and that this is a group that he feels really confident that he can call the game that he wants to call because they can do things that this team wasn't capable of doing last year from a defensive standpoint. I'm going to come back to that because there's another conversation that ties into it, and I want to, really bring the two together, right? He then was asked about Von Miller and, what he brings to the table, and he said Von can still do it at a high level. He's like, you love having those types of veterans in there, but Von can still produce. And he talked about Julius Peppers, and he said they're different players, but he said he was in Green Bay at the end of Julius Peppers' career, and Julius Peppers was a mentor to a lot of the younger guys, but he also was still a really good player. And because he was so smart and such a veteran, he felt like there was so much more you could do with a guy like J. Pep then and now Von Miller because of their experience and their background. He talked about Dorrance Armstrong, and we know Joe Witt Jr. loves him some Dorrance Armstrong. DA is one of his favorite players on the defense. He talked him up last year. He's talked him up this summer, and he's talking him up again. He said DA is a complete player, does everything extremely well. He can rush the passer. He can stop the run. You can stand him up in a two-point stance. You can put his hand in the dirt. He said you can kick him inside the three-tech, which I love and I've been talking about for over a year, and I think they're going to do that a lot more this year. He said you can play him at six-tech. You can play him at nine-tech. So he talked about all of the endless possibilities that exist with a guy like Dorrance Armstrong, and he thinks Dorrance is going to have a big year, as do I. Play style and communication are two of the things that he's pleased with the most with this defense this summer going into the season. Obviously, he said these things have to translate onto the field, but he said this team is light years ahead of where they were last year from a play style standpoint, meaning playing fast and physical. And also from a communication standpoint defensively, he said they're playing on a string. They're playing as one. They're on one accord. He loves the communication. He did not say these things last year. So, and he's not one that, mince words. And so when I hear these things from Joe Witt Jr., I tend to believe them, right? Again, I am going to question some of the things he did say here because I've talked about why before, and I'm going to bring it up again. He talked about the run defense, and he did kind of say, look, we've went out and done a lot of things to fortify the run defense. It wasn't good enough last year. We are well aware of that, which is why we made the moves we made. We like the guys we brought in here. But you really haven't gotten a sense of how good the run defense is because you're not hitting anybody in practice. You're not hitting anybody in these joint practices, and the guys really didn't play in the preseason. So he's like, I like what I've seen. I like the physicality, the run fits, everything. Now we just got to see it come to fruition on game day. But he expects them to be able to stop the run, which is what he's supposed to say. We'll see if they do it or not. He talked about the linebacker position, and he basically said, look, and this is what I'm talking about when I tell you he doesn't mince words. He said, look, we had 2 all-pro linebackers in Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, and Jordan McGee did miss a little bit of time with an injury, but he picked right up where he left off before the injury. We love where he's at. And then after him, there's a bunch of young guys that shouldn't be playing if the first 3 frontline guys are doing what they're supposed to do. So basically, any Ale Cajo or any Kane Madrano stands out there, you can sit down, okay? Those guys will not, I repeat, not see the field unless something goes wrong, and let's hope that that is not the case. He talked about talent versus scheme, and he basically said, look, I was in Green Bay back in 2014, and he always references his time in Green Bay because that's when he was this close to being a defensive coordinator, and they won, and that was, I think, the best group of guys that he's coached. So he referenced Green Bay, and he said, man, we had so much talent, and he ran off about 6 or 7 names of guys that played, and he said, I told them, like I told this group, the best guys will play, and the rest will watch them play. I was like, well, damn. But it's true. Like, he said, I'm not going to put the rest of the defense in jeopardy because I want to get one guy on the field and that guy doesn't make us better. So the guys that play at a high level, they're going to play snaps. The guys that are, might be good, but you ain't better than the dude that is out here making plays. Sorry, you're going to watch. So that's the right answer. Like, I think they're going to play Revo this year, but he'd be a prime example of if other guys are playing well, we're not going to just, because Revo's a good guy and you want to do right by Revo and you want to get him some defensive snaps, you put him on the field. If Quan Martin, Will Harris, and let's just say Percy Butler are all playing really well, or it's Tyler Owens, they're playing really well, you're not going to just say, well, let me just take one of these guys off the field so we can put Revo on the field. No. If Revo's not better than the other guys that are getting reps, that's just what it is. That's the right answer, right? He talked about Trey Amos, and he basically said, this kid's a dog. We love him, and we think he's going to be really good, which is what we think as well, right? Then he was asked, does he have the horses to run his scheme? To which he said, yes. They embody everything that I'm looking for. We've went out, we've made adjustments and changes, and I think we have everything we need to get the job done. Great. He talked about finishing games, and he talked about last year the disappointment of the defense being put in positions to close out games, not being able to do so, and how they think they've righted that ship now with some of the guys that they've brought in. He talked about a healthy Marshawn Lattimore. He talked about adding a Trey Amos. He talked about, a healthy Quan Martin. He talked about, adding all of these pieces and how it can affect what they're able to do. Um, he talked about Russell Wilson, kind of gave him his credit, but said, look, Russell got us last year. And then he said, that was my fault. That was a play call. That was on me. That was a stupid call by me because he realized I got Benjamin St. Juice and I shouldn't have put him in that position by himself. And he said, that's what Russ does. Because the guy asked him, can Russ still throw the deep ball? He's like, yeah, he did it to us last year. And that was my fault. And he usually takes accountability. When he makes a bad play call or something that he feels like he shouldn't have done, he just put his guy in a tough spot. He'll admit to it and he'll own up to it. And I love that about Joe Witt Jr. He asked, what changes when you have veterans? And he cited Bobby Wagner. He cited Von Miller. He cited, Jonathan Jones and Dietrich Wise and guys like that. And he said, what they allow you to do is put more on the plate of the defense because they are such wily veterans, because they study film in a way that young guys don't. They've seen more football than young guys have. You can ask more of a veteran and you can do more defensively. You can be exotic. You can ask them to process a lot more because they are veterans. And, that's one of the things that we hope this team is able to take advantage of. People call us old. I like to go with the term experience. Hopefully that experience wins out for the Commanders this season. Any last thing we talk about is the thing that I want to question him on, and that's ball is life. He talked about producing the ball in practice, and he said one of the things that he really liked about the defense this year is that they've been producing the ball in practice. They've had sticky coverage and that, all of these things that sound great, but I look at that assessment and he's talking about producing the ball in practice against a Noah Brownless, Terry McLaurinless offense that also had Sam Hartman and Josh Johnson at quarterback. Were you producing these turnovers against Jaden Daniels? Maybe you were, maybe you weren't. But one thing's for sure, there were no standout receivers outside of Deebo Samuel in camp for the most part. And so I bet your coverage was very sticky because you were guarding Luke McCaffrey and you were guarding Chris Moore and you were guarding Michael Strawn and you were guarding et cetera, KJ Osborne and Michael Gallup. And so I bet the coverage was sticky and I bet you did produce turnovers. We watched Sam Hartman and Josh Johnson regurgitate all over themselves the entire preseason. They didn't go a single game without sharing and turning the football over. Of course, you produce turnovers. You were playing against two quarterbacks that love to share. So he talked about them poking the ball out and punching the football out. I don't believe it until I see it. I don't believe this group is creating turnovers and that they're forcing fumbles and that they're picking off passes. And if they are, it's against the inferior. So when real talent is put in front of them, will they be able to do the same thing? That's what I'm no longer giving this defense the benefit of the doubt. But I told you before, and I'll tell you again, I believe in Joe Witt Jr. And I thought he did as best a job as someone in his position could have done a season ago with the talent that he was given. Maybe he made a bad call here or there, but look, the talent was going to fail him regardless. You can't win with Benjamin St. Juice and Vato Davis and Emmanuel Forbes Jr. out on the football field. Sorry, not sorry. You're going to fail eventually. So at the end of the day, I trust in Joe Witt Jr., and I really think he's going to prove this year that he is a force to be reckoned with as a play caller. And if he truly has the horses that he believes he has, look out for this Commanders defense, right? So Cliff Kingsbury stepped to the podium, and he started off by talking about Deebo and all of the versatility that comes with him. It's a lot of the stuff that he had said during the summer about Deebo's versatility, how he played against Deebo, twice a year when Deebo was in Arizona, San Francisco, and he was in Arizona. And there's just so much you can do with him. He said the thing that he's been most impressed with, and this is the thing I talked about about a month ago when I said the crazy part is we're not really hearing about the gadget plays with Debo. It's Debo the receiver. They didn't have any choice but to put Debo out there as a receiver because there was no Noah Brown, there was no Terry McLaurin, so they needed him to be like strictly a receiver. And so he's like, Debo has impressed him because, like, if you take away the wide receiver screen, the jet sweeps, and the other ways, creative ways to get him the football, if you just said, "Hey, Debo, go be a receiver," they feel like he can really truly go do that, and he's done that this summer. He talked about the running back by committee. And remember, I had brought this up the other day. I said, I think they're going to go with the hot hand. Like, when you're in a true running back by committee situation, I talked about this with Candy. I said, I think you could see a situation where a guy has it going early and they just ride the hot hand. That could be Eck, that could be C-Rod, it could be Bill. The only guy that I don't see them saying, oh, he's hot, let's give him the rock, is J-Mac. I don't see him getting enough opportunities to get into a rhythm and prove that he's got the hot hand. But any of the other three, I could see that happening with. It really feels like, though, C-Rod and Bill are going to be the two guys that would have a chance, get enough opportunities to get hot in a game and continue to get carries. But ultimately, he said that they really love the room. He said that he talked about it when there was 7 guys. Now there's 4, and he feels really good about all 4 of the running backs. He talked about taking shots, and I loved his answer when it came to taking shots. He was like, some of it is the defense you're going up against. Some of it is the players, and that's one thing I love. I think that's my favorite thing about Cliff Kingsbury that I've seen over just a little bit over a year and a half that he's been here, is that he trusts his players. And when Jaden comes over to him and says, hey, this is what they're doing, or Terry comes over to him and says, hey, I'm getting singled up, give me a shot, he's like, I listen, and he's like, normally when guys tell you they want this or they want that play or they want to do that, they make it work. And so he trusts his players. He also trusts his staff. He's like, our staff does a tremendous job of scouting the other team, talking about opportunities, what shot plays work best, when to use these shot plays, etc. So I thought it was a really good answer from Cliff Kingsbury. And again, it shows that he doesn't have an ego. And I find that a lot of the best play callers don't have an ego. There are some that this is my system and my scheme, and you're gonna run it my way. But most guys, the best ones that I find, they adapt their style of coaching and play calling to the talent that they have. Yeah, there are base things that you do, but ultimately there's it's it's Joe's over X's and O's, right? So he talked about the versatility of a Eckler, a Debo, a Jaden, and all the threats that they pose for a defense. So he elaborated on that. I mean, that's, I think, self-explanatory. He talked about the growth of the relationship between he and Jaden, and I do think that's something that is really interesting. There is a great article that was written by Yahoo Sports that if you haven't read, you should read it. I'm going to put that article in the comment section of this video, and go check it out. It's a great read, and it just expounds upon the relationship between Jaden and Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden's rookie season and his success. But he said that Jaden is now at a stage where he's way more comfortable telling Cliff what he likes and what he doesn't like. He said last year, especially when you're a rookie, you come in, you call a play, the play caller calls a play, and the rookie's like, yeah, I can run it, right? Now Jaden's like, I don't want that. I'm not really comfortable with that. Let's go with this. And he said those two feed off of each other, and that there's a level of trust that they had last year, but it's gone up even further after having that year under their belt and seeing the dynamic between the two of them, how hard they were. A lot of people, I don't think people realize Cliff is a workaholic just like Jaden is. So I think their relationship is pretty unique. And he kind of talked about those two growing together. He talked about John Bates, the blocker, and he said John Bates is one of the most respected guys in that locker room. And, John Bates is a dude. And he said he thinks John Bates could have a lot more catches um, if he were in a different system where they tried to target him. But he's so selfless that he's here and he's, one of the best. A lot of people think he's the best blocking tight end in the NFL. He talked about Noah Brown, and he had some really glowing praise of Noah Brown. This is not the first time that he's talked about Noah Brown in this light. Earlier in the summer, when Noah Brown was, first coming back from his injury, Cliff was like, everyone's talking about Terry, and rightfully so, but Noah Brown is such a big part of this offense. It was at that moment when I realized how big of a part of the offense Noah Brown was going to be in this upcoming season. And Cliff talked about Noah Brown in a way that I haven't heard anybody talk about Noah Brown. He's like, he's such a great route runner. He does a great job getting in and out of breaks. He tempos his routes. And, that's not what we think about when we think about Noah Brown. But according to Cliff Kingsbury, he's one of the best route runners on the team. And they have high hopes for Noah Brown. And he went on to say, look, Noah was having a tremendous year last year, which he was before the injury. He was on pace for a career season last year. And then the injury happened. And so they think the world of this guy. Clearly, Cliff does. And they can't wait to get him back on the field with Terry and Debo and have that whole, crew together. And that's why they feel like this offense has a chance to be so dynamic. He talked about the Giants' defensive line, and he said it might be the best that we'll see all season long. I don't necessarily disagree with him. You talk about Dexter Lawrence, which, he is a beast. We know it. He's wrecked games against us before. He talked about Abdul Carter. He talked about Brian Burns. He talked about Kayvon Thibodeau. He talked about the secondary and how they've improved and they've added guys back there. And he just like, this is going to be a challenge. And we're looking forward to seeing, what we can do against this group. We know it's going to be a tough task, but I think they feel like they're more than capable of dealing with it. He talked about Bill Mania, and like we've been talking about Bill Mania for a very long time. It's a real thing. And he said, look, man, um, he loves this story. He said clearly that guy loves football more than me because there's no way I would have, been on the practice squad knowing I couldn't play. Amen to that. I have a story to tell in a similar situation. And so he's like, I would have been bagging groceries somewhere or something, got a job somewhere because I wouldn't have been doing that. So I love his story. He said that all summer long, but he had a funny Bill story to end the presser. He basically talked about learning that Ja'Cory Crosky Merritt's name that he goes by is Bill. And he said that, first time he heard his name being, heard him being called Bill, he was like, he thought that running backs coach Anthony Lynn had lost his mind. Like, yo, Anthony is tripping. And then, he was like asking the positional coaches, have y'all had a chance to, talk to the rookies, get them, where you need them to be? And Anthony Lynn was like, yeah, I talked to Bill. And he's like, yo, I really thought this man was, lunching. Like, it was really funny because, he was like, yo, I thought Anthony Lynn had lost his mind. We thought we lost Anthony. Like, who the hell is this Bill guy? And then, so it was a really funny moment. Cliff's a funny dude. You can tell Cliff's a funny dude. And then he said what he's looking forward to this season and in week one. And he just really said he just wants to, we got all these new pieces, right? But they really haven't been on the field together. So he's really just looking forward to seeing what it all looks like. And I think that's all of us as fans just want to see what it looks like. We haven't seen Debo and Terry and Noah and Brandon Coleman with the offensive line and, Josh Conley Jr. at right tackle. And like, we haven't seen any of this stuff. So all of this is going to look new. We feel like it has a chance to be dynamic. We got a different backfield. Let's just see what it looks like. And so that's the thing he's looking forward to in week one in this season. So those were the two coordinators. Now, before we get to behind enemy lines, let's get a word from one of our sponsors. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. So as we go behind enemy lines, this is a big game, as I alluded to at the top of the show. You got to get off to a fast start. This is a very dangerous Giants team. And I don't want to use the phrase, they don't have anything to lose. That's bullshit. They're 0-0 just like everybody else. They are coming into this game thinking, why not us? We got just the goodest chance as anyone of, being a playoff team. And they're not coming in here thinking, well, we're 1-7, we got nothing to lose. No, they're 0-0 and they expect to win. And so we've talked ad nauseum about this defensive line. We've talked about the secondary, which I think we can take advantage of, especially those corners. They're a really solid linebacker group. We haven't talked a lot about their offense, though. We talked so much about their defense and all the threats that they pose and what our offense may be able to do against their defense, but we haven't talked about our defense against their offense. And I do think the Giants have some issues offensively. I don't think this is a dynamic nor explosive offense, but they can be. They do have guys that can run, right? They do have guys that can get open and uncover, right? We've had issues with Wan'Dale Robinson in the past. We've had issues with Malik Neighbors. We've only seen him once, and in that one game, he lit us up. And if he would have just caught the football at the end of that game, we probably don't win, right? We've always had issues with the tight ends, and they have some really solid tight ends. And Russell Wilson loves throwing to the tight end. They're going to run boot action. They're going to get him out of the pocket. They're going to move the launch point. We have to be disciplined. Their offensive line isn't great, but it's good enough to get the job done if we allow it to. I think Tyrone Tracy is an underrated running back. I look at this Giants team offensively, and I think it starts up front. If they can run the football, we're going to be in a dogfight. If we can neutralize their rushing attack and force Russell Wilson to have to drop back on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. That's not something that he's really equipped to do consistently at this juncture of his career. You put him in 3rd and 4, you put him in 3rd and 3, you put him even in 3rd and 5, he'll pick you apart because that's what he wants to do. He wants to check it down. He wants to throw the shallow cross. He wants to throw it underneath, right? That's what they want to do. They want to start fast on early downs. We're going to have to win the early downs in this game. We'll talk more about that tomorrow as we get to the keys to victory. But you're going to have to win 1st and 2nd down because they want to get into 3rd and manageable. And if you do that with Russell Wilson, he will pick you apart. They want to be able to get to a 2nd and 1 where they can go big play action fake. And that's what he does best. Take that shot down the field, throw that moon ball. And we know Malik Neighbors can go and get it. And so we can't be giving up, big chunks of yardage on the early downs. We struggled against the run against the Giants last year. Obviously, this is a different team. We don't expect to have those same issues we had a year ago. But if we are having those issues and we can't stop the run consistently and they're getting to the edges with the boots and they're able to get into manageable down and distances, they can eat up the clock, shorten the game. That's what they want to do. They want to shorten this game. Because if we get into a track meet with them, they can't keep up. And they know that, right? They want to muck up the game, make it sloppy, make it low scoring because that favors them. We were one of the highest scoring teams in the league last year. They can't keep pace with that. That's not who they are. They want to bring us down to their level. They want to make this a game played in the high teens, low 20s. And if that happens, if they accomplish that, they're right in their wheelhouse and they got a chance to steal this game in week 1. If we push this game up to the high 20s, low 30s, they got no chance because that's not who they are unless we're doing something crazy like turning the football over. Again, we'll talk about that tomorrow because obviously turnovers are the great equalizer. We take care of the ball. Let's see if we can't produce some turnovers and take the ball away from the Giants. That would be nice. We'll talk about that again tomorrow, as I mentioned. But these are some of the things that I look at with this team as we go behind enemy lines. The Giants are hungry. They believe that this year is different. You got a desperate head coach. You got a desperate GM. They made some shrewd moves this offseason. They feel confident for the first time in a long time that this is different, that the vibes are good. And Russell Wilson's a really good leader. You can say what you want about his play on the field and how he may have diminished in certain areas. But one thing is for certain, he's still a tremendous leader. Guys will follow. And if he gets hot, he gets into a rhythm, you let him start hitting the deep ball, you could be in for a world of trouble. Those are some of the things we have to avoid against this Giants team in week 1. We'll talk so much more about the keys to victory against the Giants. But this team going into the game, 6-point favorites, that means Vegas feels like we should win this game comfortably. I want to see this team come out fast. I want to see them guns a-blazing, apply pressure early and often and see if the Giants can keep pace. I don't believe they can, but if we let them muck up the game and they're able to hang tough and you look up and it's 13-10 at halftime, or you look up and it's a one-score game at halftime, it's 16-10, it's 17-10, they're right there, they're going to think they have a shot. You take it to them early, you jump on these boys like we did last year in the second game when it was 21-7 at halftime. We didn't keep our foot in the gas pedal that game, though. But if you jump on them like that and you go to halftime up 2 scores, I think you can run away with this game and have because it'd be nice, right? You got a quick turnaround and you got to go travel to Green Bay and take on the Packers on a Thursday night. And so it'd be nice if you could get the starters out of there after 3 quarters, but that's not how NFC East family business is conducted. You're not getting your squad out of there after 3 quarters in week 1, So I won't bet on that, but I know some of you are hoping that takes, or are banking on that, because we all are hoping that takes place. But I know some of you are banking on that taking place. I am not one of them. Anyhow, that is going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Commanders Nightly News. I'm so glad to be back, and I'm so glad that you are joining me on Commanders Nightly News. This week has been, a bit, muddled up because of just so much going on. It's always hard getting back into the swing of things, and you add new things on to the docket, and it just becomes so much to kind of juggle. I'll get into a rhythm. We'll get these videos out in a more timely manner, but I appreciate y'all rocking with the kid. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more great content. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Looking forward to chopping it up. Big shout out to the sponsor of this video, Sleeper. Looking forward to talking about Sleeper so much more this season. It's a great app, and you need to download it. In any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. See you next time.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold.